Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome in back to the lab, your weekly source for the full rundown of everything IFL. Whether you're here for the recap of the week that was, the preview of the week that is to come, or any other of the great goings on in the Indoor Football League, you have come to the right place. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking some time out of your schedule to embark on this Week 13 journey with me. And a further apology for those out there who are expecting this thing to start at 9:30, as I had originally said. Had to kick that back a little bit because of some personal items to take care of, but everything's all good. We are ready to rock. So let's get down to brass tacks. So for those of you who are new to this channel or to the Indoor Football League in general, I want to warmly welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game, a passion that I have channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for a sports forum site called Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site that specializes specifically in the coverage of the IFL and its 14-member teams. Each week we will have up-to-date team rosters, game previews, game recaps once the 60 minutes are played, and a whole host of another analysis on this great game. There you will find my written post where I have put down my predictions for this week's slate of games. So let us bring forth our little presentation here. We have made it into the teenage weeks of the Indoor Football League season. So time is, I guess, quickly running out for teams to try to make their moves, whether they're already firmly in the playoff conversation trying to improve upon their seeding. Maybe some teams are on the outside looking in, and other teams playing spoilers. So the next 7 weeks of IFL football are going to be action-packed. You won't want to miss a second of it, and we will have every game in that stretch right here on Wager Wednesday. So week 12, I feel like we say this all the time, but it was a chaos-ridden week 12 in the Indoor Football League. We had upsets that were staged. We had long-standing trends of game outcomes that went a complete 180. We had some great potential playoff previews, some potential championship previews, if you want to venture that far. But we will recap all 7 of those games that took place this past weekend. We will also figure out how those add into the season-long tracker, figure out how underdogs and favorites are doing on the spread, on the money line, performance on the over-under. So we'll talk about all of those, how last week's results factor into that. Once we recap all those, we will preview all of our Week 13 games, make our picks, and finally try to put together a 3-leg parlay that winds up winning, something that has eluded us since Week 6 of the season. So quite a bit of work to do to hunker down and try to deliver on that goal. So week 12, we started things off with a standalone game on Friday at Resch Center. Green Bay hosting the Iowa Barnstormers in a game where the Blizzard were looking to improve their current record, and Iowa trying to get that second win of the season. And this game had a very, very surprising start. It was Green Bay that started out slow, while Iowa staged touchdown drives on 3 of their first 4 drives. They ended up with a 16-point lead at its highest. And then, somehow in some way, things just started to click for the Green Bay Blizzard. A Jazaric Peterson kickoff return for a touchdown late in the first quarter, you could argue, was the turning point of that game. It really supercharged the team offensively, defensively, and on special teams, where they just flat out dominated for the 45 minutes that followed. The defense in particular did not give up a single touchdown in the second, third, or fourth quarters for the Iowa Barnstormers. Their only touchdown in that stretch was a pick six from Caleb Street that actually gave the Barnstormers a 32-31 lead midway through the third period. But that's the last time that they would factor on the scoreboard for the duration of the ball game. So Green Bay is the team that closes it out. 21-0 run. They end up winning convincingly, 52-32. The game came up short of our projection of the over at 94.5. So we start off 0-1 rather, heading into our Saturday games. We had 3 kickoff at 7 p.m. Eastern time, one of which was a long-standing rivalry that dates back as far as the early 2010s in the original AFL. The Arizona Rattlers and the Jacksonville Sharks. What a difference a week makes for Jacksonville. They got back to where they have the home turf advantage. They got the 2 extra days of rest, having played the previous Thursday at Massachusetts. And they took all of those advantages and took full advantage of them, for lack of a better term. By the time that we were a few minutes in, Arizona already was facing a 16-point deficit. And to their credit, they did play very impressively to claw back on several different occasions. They got back to within a 1-score game, but for some reason, they just couldn't string together that play to finally retake that lead. They had opportunities late in the first half, early in the second half, and on the final possession of the game, where some end-game management of the clock kind of went against Arizona. Could have been a matter of confidence, could have been a matter of maybe let's see where this thing takes us, but the Rattlers didn't even get past their own 10-yard line in their comeback bid. And when they did, it got called back by penalty. So it is Jacksonville playing a very impressive game, logging their 7th win of the season by way of 54-48 victory over the Arizona Rattlers, who have now suddenly lost 2 consecutive ball games and are only 3-3 in their last 6, I believe. We had another Week 12 game, Eastern Conference tilt, out in Fishers, Indiana. The Freight looking to put an end to the longest active losing streak in the IFL, one that they hope to accomplish against the Massachusetts Pirates. This game dominated by the defense to kind of start things off. Fishers getting just a little bit more offensively, plus a deuce from former Pirate Callum Sutherland to take a 15-14 lead at the half. Unfortunately for the Freight, things kind of went off the rails in the second half that followed. A common theme that they've had for the past couple games, but the Carlos Davis-led offense was stopped pretty much wire to wire in the second half by Massachusetts' stout defense. And Kenji Bahar was able to lead pretty much consecutive touchdown drives all the way through. They ended up getting a field goal as part of that stretch. But combine that offensive efficiency with locking down defensively, this turned out to be that vintage type of win for the Massachusetts Pirates. 40-23 was the final score in that game. So it is 8 straight losses for Fishers, who are now 2-8, while the Pirates trying to fight their way back into the playoff conversation, heading into this week with a 4-5 record. So very much still alive in that mix. Our only non-conference game saw Quad City head to San Antonio for the first time ever to play the Gunslingers. Quad City entering this game with an Eastern Conference best 7-2 record, having Daquan Neal back for a second game in a row fully healthy. This was another game where defense was the main theme of the first half. Both teams took turns either getting clutch defensive stands or taking the ball away from each other. And by the time the second half arrived, we basically had a new ball game. It was tied 13 at that point. And that's when Quad City started to make a little bit of their move separating out. They eventually ended up at a spot where they had a 7-point advantage as San Antonio was trying to drive late and tie the game. But it would end up being a Joaquin Colazo interception, one of 4 that the signal caller hurled during the night. With this one winding up in the hands of Nick Harris, who returned it all the way for a touchdown to make it a 14-point game. That play certainly kickstarting his accolade as the reigning defensive player of the week, as voted on by the league. So congratulations there to Nick. So yeah, that defining play helped us win our first bet of the week. Both teams ended up scoring a touchdown after that defining play, which ended up resulting in a 51-37 victory by the Steamwheelers over the Gunslingers. Quad City up to 8-2, and San Antonio with a record of 3-7. For our Western Conference slate, 3 games started at 9 p.m. Vegas at Northern Arizona at Prescott Valley, taking on the Wranglers. Vegas, we kind of knew going in they had a very interesting, I guess, problem, if you could call it that, at the quarterback position. They decided to ride Jaden DeLaura once again, and DeLaura turned in another outing that I can really only describe as perfect. The rookie led scoring drives on every single one of Vegas's possessions, while that Nighthawk defense made life hard for Northern Arizona and Ramon Atkins. And this was a game that quickly got away from the hosts. By the time the fourth quarter came rolling around, it was already 56-21 in favor of Vegas. To their credit, Northern Arizona certainly played hard throughout the final, all the way through to the final whistle. And they ended up putting up a respectable 43 points, which does pale in comparison, granted, to the 63 that Vegas put up in order to clinch their win. But ended up turning up to be an exciting game nonetheless, particularly for the Nighthawk faithful, who have seen their team improve their record further to 6-4. Northern Arizona still stuck at that 1 win on the season. We also had the second meeting of the season between the San Diego Strike Force and the Tucson Sugar Skulls. This matchup featured the return of Nate Davis to the lineup, and boy, oh boy, was the difference with him behind center night and day, especially in a venue that has historically been very, very tough for opposing defenses to put up points. San Diego got arguably their best game of the season, especially in that second half too, just keeping Tucson at bay. San Diego had built a halftime lead by that point, and they were just unstoppable here. Kind of a disappointing result, though, for Tucson as a team that really needs to start logging wins quickly to get back into the conversation. With this 58-42 defeat at the hands of the Strike Force, the Sugar Skulls are now 2.5 games behind both the Strike Force and the Nighthawks for a potential playoff position. So that top 4 in the West looking very much like it could be the same top 4 teams that the West offered for last year's postseason. We have Monica chiming in as well. Not a lot of surprises in the winners last week, except maybe Jacksonville. Yeah, I mean, we had really only seen a couple of technical upsets, Jacksonville being one of them, where they were a 1.5 underdog. And Massachusetts, even though they were an even -110 on the money line with the freight, still had the relative disadvantage of being the visiting team. Everything else was more or less chalky, where teams won and ended up covering the spread as favorites. One of the games that did not follow suit, however, was the final game that we will discuss here between the Tulsa Oilers and the Bay Area Panthers, 2 very capable and qualified teams that could be meeting each other later in the season. Once we flip the calendar over to August, did we get a really solid preview of what that matchup might look like. In this game, Bay Area started out strong, got a 12-point lead. Tulsa charged right back, retook the lead. And then we had a stretch in the second half where Bay Area got a touchdown on offense. The ensuing kickoff was actually recovered by Bay Area for a touchdown with a drop kick. So it was basically an 11-point swing by Axel Perez alone for the Panthers. So another double-digit deficit and another rally by the Oilers, who actually led this one late. They were up by 4 points, needed a defensive stand to really solidify their chances of winning. But Bay Area coming through with the touchdown with a few minutes to go, a 2-yard rushing touchdown by Josh Jones, ended up being the difference maker, along with an end zone interception by Trey Meadows off TJ Edwards with under a minute to go to put the game on ice. Absolutely fantastic ending to this one, at least from the objectively neutral fans' point of view. Bay Area winning this one, but Tulsa covering the spread as Bay Area wins by 3. 44-41, the final of that one, in a game where notably the over-under was 84.5. So folks who had some faith bet the over, you won by the hook. So that was the lowdown on week 12. We went 3-4 with our picks, which honestly, with how chaotic things went, certainly not a bad result. Certainly more than willing to take that as more or less a wash, at least from an emotional perspective, and kind of move on. We did really well with betting the spread, 2-0 in those. Our money line betting went 1-2, and we missed each of our 2 over-under picks. Despite all of that, our spread betting and over-under betting still remain especially strong, with that obvious stick out like a sore thumb weakness being the money line betting. So, fantastic week. That was week 12, and expect a lot more of it with this coming week. Another 7-game slate. The 3-leg parlay of the week, as we mentioned earlier, was another dud. This has just been a struggle picking winners on these parlay slips over the past few weeks. Just 2 winners in the last 9. We need 3 in 1 week in order for one of these to cash. So a little bit disheartening, but at the same time, a bit understandable given how hot we were to begin the season with putting these picks together in parlays. So just have to luck our way into trying to get back to that. Really not much more to it. Got to keep picking confidently. So even though this past week was a net loss for both the flat method and the weighted method, our 5-week rolling average remains very convincingly good. 19-12 overall record, nearly 3.5 units gained since week 7, along with an 11% ROI. So looking at that trend right there, we are continually on the upswing, a couple blips on the radar there. But I'm confident that we're still in very fine shape. Just got to stay vigilant with our picks. And the same graph here, except for displaying the percentages in terms of ROI. So last week dipped us down below that 5% mark that we are trying to end the season at, while the weighted method still remains below. But hopefully both of our methods turn up positive by the time all is said and done. So here is a look at our yearly results by bet type. So common recurring theme from the past few weeks, betting on the spread, pretty much split between the favorites and the underdogs. No real statistically significant general trends to really speak of there. And even though the road teams have been strong the past couple of weeks, both on the spread and straight up, it's still a pretty notable advantages for home teams across those couple of bets. The over-under remains fairly advantageous to under bettors. But you'll notice that I've used a new threshold for evaluating which point total is more or less the average. So for most of this season, we had that number set at 82.5. But when I ran the numbers again this week, we have officially crossed over to 83.5 territory. That is the average over-under set in games in the Indoor Football League this season. And that sits just barely above the average score, actual score of IFL games this year, which is just a shade above 83 points per game. So there's not really much that we can tell strictly by looking at that over-under number, which tells us that in order to get the most out of this type of bet, we really got to look at the teams and the matchups they're in. How are these teams doing with cashing the over versus cashing the under? How does the tempo of both teams play out when they're situated against each other? So those are the types of critical questions that we're going to have to ask when figuring out which over-under bets that we want to take going forward. I did find one interesting thing, splitting these into 4 relatively equal buckets by point total. Games between 80.5 and 84.5 are actually 60% to the under, whereas both ends from the minimum up to the lower interval and then the higher interval to the maximum point are more or less even. That tells us that those games are going pretty much the way that we expect. For low-scoring games, they're in some cases either blasting by the total or just barely making it across. And in the case where the over-under is high to begin with, those genuinely have a shot because of either the way that both teams score points or maybe the way that they defend. So very interesting numbers here, whichever way that you want to kind of spin them. It's one of my favorite things about this is these are all up for interpretation. All righty, so team by team trends. Still got some statistically significant results here, particularly with our over-under betting, which we kind of highlighted in the last slide a little bit, but we'll spell them out here again. Teams like Arizona, Fishers, and Iowa have been very strong bets as far as cashing overs. On the flip side of that, Northern Arizona, Tucson, and Massachusetts, probably very good teams to go ahead and take the unders for those games, just simply based on the eye test and the results that we've seen so far. But yeah, again, this whole thing goes back to the theme of you can take a look at these numbers all you want and try to tell as convincing a story as we can. And some of those results highlighted in either green or red do a pretty nice job in conveying how significant those really are. All righty, here are our bet results by team. So with our results last week, we have successfully navigated Bay Area and Quad City to that 7-win goal that we had established in the preseason. We've got an opportunity to push Green Bay, Jacksonville, and Iowa across this week. 2 of those teams, Green Bay and Jacksonville, we could do all in one shot with one game, assuming that we make the correct pick. Ironically enough, my most difficult team in trying to figure out is the team that I'm closest geographically to, the Massachusetts Pirates. So we'll see if we can try to figure out what's happening with those games. They are playing Iowa, which has been a team that I've had a lot of success picking the over-under with. Is that something that I lean on to try to come up with a winner in a Pirates game? Stick around to find out. All righty, time for our weekly disclaimers. The lines and odds that we're going to be using today come from DraftKings Sportsbook. And this series is really just for fun. I explain the games, some notable players, notable trends, make some picks, and see if they pan out. That's pretty much it. We're not here for the purposes of making money, not really gambling advice. This is just a guy that loves numbers, trying to play the numbers out here and seeing how we do. There's no such thing as a lock or a guarantee in the sports wagering world. We will definitely get to that in some of these picks, but very important to note that too. If you would like to tail or fade my selections, you're more than welcome to do so, but please game responsibly. if you do decide to test those waters. Practice safe gaming habits, which includes setting a budget, both time and money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you or a loved one may be feeling that there are issues with problem gaming for somebody close by, there are a lot of resources that you can refer to for help in that subject matter. Haveagameplan.org is one example. Responsibleplay.org is another. Those are two of many great examples to help debunk gambling myths and direct people to resources where they can go for immediate assistance there. So all of that having been said, we've got a 7-game slate in front of us, folks. Let's go and make some picks. And I find it funny that week 13 begins on Friday the 13th. Spooky. In any event, tomorrow, Jacksonville travels to Green Bay. This is a matchup of two top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. Should be very evenly matched. Bookmakers giving the home turf advantage to the Blizzard, making them exactly 3-point favorites. So a rare occasion where spread winds up on a whole number. The over-under is 83.5. On the money line, Jacksonville trying to cash as a dog for the second week in a row, plus 124. Green Bay looking to get another strong win at home as minus 148 as the outright winner. What a matchup this is. Both teams come in red hot. They're winners of 7 of 10 each. And really the only thing separating these teams right now is that conference tiebreaker, which Green Bay owns. The Sharks, we weren't really sure how they were going to look last week amidst all of their roster moves, releasing Caleb Barker, who was their starting quarterback in week 1 and throughout much of the season. But the Sharks ended up deciding on a quarterback tandem of Blaine Espinoza and current starter Tyler Huff. Huff was an instrumental piece last week in leading the Sharks to victory 54-48 over the Arizona Rattlers, and the Sharks have not been shy about letting him and Larry McCarron run with the football. Part of the reason why Jacksonville was so successful in last week's outing, their dominance on the ground. They pushed through Arizona's defense for over 100 yards rushing on the evening. Tyler Huff personally accounted for about 75 of those yards alone, as the Rattlers simply did not have an answer. There is a little bit of meat left on the bone when it comes to the passing game. Huff has made plays with his arm occasionally, but it's not something that he's been asked to do very often. And it begs the question, if Jacksonville falls behind, how will their offense adjust their strategy as the game gets deeper in? That's what I'm very curious about when viewing this matchup. In particular, one I'm looking really forward to watching is Jacksonville's defense versus Green Bay's offense. Both units, respectively, are tops in their positions at, in Green Bay's case, points for, and in Jacksonville's case, points allowed. Though I should note that in the past 7 games, the Sharks have surrendered 40 or more points. So we're seeing a little bit of some of the effects that maybe injuries have had on that roster, like they lost Noah Lyles on the defensive line, Chris Rice, stout linebacker. So maybe those are finally starting to pile up and feel the residual results from that. But this is going to be a stiff test for both teams. In the end, I think Green Bay's offense and a little bit more balance there between the pass and the rush is ultimately what is going to make the difference in this game. So I've got Green Bay, and I am going to lay this 3-point spread. I will concede I would not do this if this spread was 3.5. At that point, my mind would race towards Jacksonville. It kind of goes back to a trend that we've seen the past couple weeks, where we've seen evenly matched games, and in some of these cases, most of them, we've sided with the underdog. The reason why I'm not following suit here is because the Blizzard have been a covering monster, especially at home. They've covered in 4 straight games. They've covered in 4 straight home games. The only 2 times this season where they did not cover at home, both were by the half-point hook. They won by 5 against Iowa in their, I believe it was their home opener, when they were 5.5-point favorites. That was a backdoor cover. And their game against Arizona, which saw the Rattlers steal to win 51-47. Green Bay was 3.5-point underdogs, 4-point margin of defeat. Didn't end up coming through. So I like Green Bay's spread record at 4-2. They're one of the better spread covering teams in the Indoor Football League. I think they're just one of 4 teams that are truly above 500 on the spread on the season. So at -3, I do like this number. Worst case scenario, we might have to rely on Andrew Mevis breaking a deadlock at the buzzer, which, fine. I'll accept that push in that case. So Green Bay at -3. If you're looking for a little bit of a safer pick, maybe the 3 points isn't enough for you. Green Bay money line -148. Not a terrible idea either. But we all know how my money line betting has been this year, so we'll see how it goes. So we'll kickstart this week, Green Bay -3. We have a very congested 6-game schedule with triplets of games being separated by just 1 hour for kickoff times. We'll start off with Massachusetts and Iowa, a battle in Des Moines. The Pirates going in as 3.5-point favorites, the over-under 85 in the hook. For the money line, the Pirates are -155 and Iowa is +130. What a very, very interesting game that we have on our hands. This is the first meeting of the season between Iowa and Massachusetts. And Monica observing that historically this has been a very, very tough season, or a very, very tough series overall. In fact, if you go back to the all-time series, we've played 7 of these games at the IFL level. All 7 have been won by the home team, including 2 separate come-from-behind efforts by the Barnstormers to defeat the Pirates in the 2022 and 2024 editions of this series. So from a historical perspective, even with Iowa at 1-8, they do have that to kind of lean back on. But this Pirates defense has been on a whole other level in their past few games following their loss against Tucson, maxing out at just 33 points that they gave up in that loss to Northern Arizona. The past couple games, they've only given up 29 to the Sharks and 23 to the Fishers Freight. So they're channeling their 2021 form in a hurry, which is a much needed and welcome sight for the Bay Staters as they try to keep their streak of consecutive playoff appearances alive, which spans their 2 years in the NAL as well. There's a lot of interesting options for this game. And something that I thought of when I was writing my piece is that we really haven't gone against the grain on many picks this year. A lot of them have been like, hey, here's a strong trend. Let's back it. It makes sense. This pick is probably going to surprise you. Iowa +3.5. Iowa +3.5. The Barnstormers the past few seasons have always been, well, they've struggled, no doubt, but they've always been good for at least 2 games a season, almost exclusively at home, where they just explode and go nuclear. Think of their lone win against Fishers back when it was either week 6 or 7, where the Barnstormers put up 68 points, and we really had no idea what was making the engine run at that time. This might just be me as a fan being a little bit a little bit overprotective almost. But I feel like we're due for one of those games. I feel like we're due. The Pirates, the past few weeks, have gone mostly against run-heavy teams. So to switch from that over to the pass-happy attack with James Cahoon, Keon Williams, Keyshawn Taylor, Jalen Bracey, that's going to be a much different element for them that I feel is going to be very interesting to see how Tom Menas game plans his 8-man defensive crew to try to put a stop to that. Maybe see what they were able to take from the final 3 quarters of the Iowa-Green Bay game to try to replicate. But Iowa to plus 3.5, it gives you that extra cushion. Let's say the Pirates get a field goal opportunity late in the game to try to win it. You'd be safe here as opposed to the plus 130 money line bet. But yeah, plus 3.5 is going to be my play for this one. Monica is predicting the under at 85.5. This is going to be very interesting. I am going to come back to that bet in particular a bit later on when we talk over the parlay. I feel like that is a very, very interesting choice to talk about because there is certainly merit to both sides. All right, and one of our other 8 o'clock games is Fishers at Quad City. These two teams met in overtime in the prior matchup at Fisher Event Center. Not projected to be as close here with the battle at Vibrant Arena. The Steam Wheelers are laying 13 in the hook, over under 81.5. Money line Fishers plus 350 and Quad City an astounding minus 455. For Fishers, it just keeps going from bad to worse, unfortunately, for the expansion team. Where even in their midst of 8 straight losses, we've seen some reasonably solid takeaways from them. But we've also seen lapses that were like, oh yeah, of course, this is an expansion team. But they are also trying to break in a rookie quarterback in Carlos Davis, who is expected to make his 3rd straight IFL start and just the 3rd of his young IFL career at that. Needless to say, this is a tough matchup against the Eastern Conference's best team and perhaps one of the most explosive defenses in the game. We saw what Quad City was able to do against a pretty proven playmaker in Joaquin Collazo, who ended up following up his Player of the Week performance the week before, and then getting met last week with 4 interceptions staged by Quad City defensive players. So could they bring that same level of intensity against a rookie signal caller, especially with how good that defensive line has been? They very well certainly could. Yeah, it's just so tough. This is, for a team trying to snap out of an 8-game losing streak, you couldn't handpick a worse matchup. So not to dilly-dally any further, I do like Quad City even at minus 13.5. There are a few reasons why I do. For starters, this is the league's worst spread team in Fishers, 3-7, versus the league's best spread team at 8-2 in the Quad City Steam Wheelers. And remember, those 2 losses were in games where Daquan Neal did not start. When Neal is in the game, Quad City is 8-0 against the spread. So that alone speaks volumes. Yeah, they just look really strong right now, do Quad City. And they also added another weapon in signing Tyler King, formerly of the Jacksonville Sharks. So it's going to be interesting to see how they incorporate King with guys like Jared Ware Jr., Dion McShane. The rich just get richer in Quad City, it looks like. And we all know what Quad City is capable of doing when they are in the friendly confines of their home arena. So Give me Steam Wheelers at minus 13.5. If things go south for Fishers like the past couple games have, particularly in the second half, we might be staring at a 20-point game here. But who knows? Fishers may surprise us or backdoor cover us. One of the two. All right, let's take a look at the other 8:05 Eastern kickoff game. Red River Rumble, IFL edition. Third and final meeting of the season between the San Antonio Gunslingers and the Tulsa Oilers. A game where San Antonio enters as 7.5-point dogs. The over-under is set at 79.5. San Antonio is plus 205 money line, and Tulsa is minus 250. As I was thinking about this game earlier today, I thought, hey, coincidentally, the last time Tulsa entered a matchup with San Antonio, they were trying to snap a 2-game losing streak. Well, fast forward about a month plus later, and Tulsa, losers of 2 straight games, get another bounce-back opportunity against a team that they have beaten twice already in the season. For San Antonio, their search for week-to-week consistency, more often than not, has left them with more questions than answers. With respect to the Gunslingers, this is really their playoff time. At 3-7, there is very, very little room left for error if the Gunslingers want to reinsert themselves as not only a legitimate playoff contender, but also a team that you can't just walk over on any given week in the event that you happen to draw them on a particular weekend. They do suffer a fairly significant loss on the offensive side of the football. A relative newcomer, Jalen Robinson, who had split time at running back and receiver, showed some pretty solid pop in his game. He is now out for this season. He was placed on the season-ending injured reserve as part of this week's series of league transactions. So the supporting cast for Joaquin Collazo is pretty much going to be led by Keyshawn Harper, Glenn Gibbons, Naquan Murray, and whoever else they decide to rotate in as that third, fourth receiver. It's an offense that still has a really good ceiling, something that they didn't really have with either Malik Henry or Guy Myers in the first couple meetings against the Oilers. But on the road, this is very tough. Tulsa's last home game was a loss, but it was against a very good Quad City team. Lots of interesting picks for this one. I initially was thinking the under at 79.5, but I was drawn away from that by a couple of different trends here. One of them is that the underdog has actually covered in 5 straight Tulsa Oiler games. Another was that the road team is 7-3 against the spread in Gunslingers games. So there's a bit of, I guess we'll call it sharp reverse line of thinking, where this is kind of another against any sense of common logic pick. But I like San Antonio at plus 7.5 with their backs against the wall. We've kind of talked about some trends before, but another one that does pop up often is the whole when you play a team 3 times in a season and you beat them the first 2 times, it is very, very tricky in a lot of instances to grab that third win against that same team, because the two are so familiar with each other by that point. Like, as far as the Gunslingers defense goes, you know what you're going to be getting out of TJ Edwards. You know what you're going to be getting out of Hassan Rogers, Cole Blackman, Jerminic Smith. Like, that offense, for as good as it is, really hasn't changed from the last time that these two teams played. Monica going a little bit in the opposite direction here, asserting Tulsa minus 7.5. Certainly not a bad pick, I will concede. This plus 7.5 pick of mine is certainly a little bit more of a roll of a dice, but one that I am willing to take with San Antonio, relatively speaking, needing this game a lot more than does Tulsa. I honestly think it comes down to whether Collazo can bounce back, take care of the ball, stage some pretty solid drives, and see if the revamped Gunslingers defense can get to Edwards and draw some pressure, especially with Edwards having been a little bit bit by the turnover bug recently in the past 2 losses for Tulsa. So we just need San Antonio to keep it close. We are past the key number of 7, which is another added layer of comfort. So that is how I view the 8 o'clock slate. And Monica mentioning Khalil Rashad for San Antonio. Absolutely another fantastic player, particularly on the special teams, too. The ball in his hands on a kick return, guy can make a house call at any given moment. All righty, time for the West Coast slate, 9:05. Tucson at Arizona, a matchup where the Rattlers have lost 2 straight games, but have not lost the faith of the bookmakers. They are 11.5-point favorites as the second largest spread of this week. The over-under is 90.5, the highest of the 7 games this week. On the money line, Tucson is plus 295 and Arizona minus 375, which I believe was their money line figures when the 2 teams played each other in week 7 at the Tucson Convention Center. The main theme here for both teams is they need a bounce back in every worst way. Tucson is actually coming off of 3 consecutive losses. Arizona, 2 consecutive losses. So somebody's going to get on the right track here. As for Tucson, a little bit of a crazy trend for them over the past few weeks. The offense has looked really good under Jorge Reyna, along with getting a nice running back duo in Devontae Sapp-Lynch and Jameis Williams, getting contributions out of Larry Harrington as a receiver. They've put up points, and they've shown the capability of lighting up the scoreboard on any given night. The trouble for them, oddly enough, has been their defense. The past few games, 68 points allowed, 48, and 58. Very, very tough to win ball games when you're giving up that many points. And that's something that very well could come back to bite them against an Arizona offense that is second in the league in point scoring per game. Even in losing last week, Arizona still managed to stage 48 points in Jacksonville, where the Sharks had only allowed about 28 points per game at VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. So this is going to be a very interesting game. Both offenses are flaming hot. My pick here, strange as it sounds, is dependent on a claim that I made last week. I am apparently the Rattlers version of the Antichrist. I must go Arizona money line until they finally come through. Which, let's be perfectly honest, if they don't come through and Tucson actually stages this upset, how nuclear do things get in Glendale? That is a very, very interesting hypothetical question that I really don't want to know the answer to, if I'm being honest. Monica showing some confidence in Arizona at minus 11.5, even though the Rattlers, oddly enough, have not been one of the stronger teams in the IFL against the spread this season. But yeah, this projects as a prime candidate for a bounce back game for the Rattlers, especially considering where their relative cold spell was kickstarted by a rally staged by the Tucson Sugar Skulls about a month and a half ago. So if there's any way to kind of reset whatever hoax is holding them back, why not punch the team that started the streak dead in the mouth? But yeah, my play is going to be Arizona minus 375. I don't like doing it, but it has to be done. I've got to ride it until it hits, and then we can get more creative. 20-6 in their last 26 games overall, by the way. And we've somehow been on the wrong side of 3 of those 6 losses. So you can certainly understand my frustration there. I'd hope. Very, very good game out in Henderson. This is another 3 versus 2 preview, even though this one is in number 3's barn. The Bay Area Panthers and the Vegas Nighthawks. The Hawks at home, taking 2.5 from the Panthers. Over-under is 87.5. The money line is Panthers minus 142 and Vegas plus 120. I am really looking forward to seeing, A, if Jayden de Laura remains the starter over Jerome Johnson, which I'm suspecting should be the case based on the absolute masterclasses that de Laura has put together the past couple games. So if de Laura starts, is he able to keep that up against an historically strong Bay Area defense? There's just so much firepower on both ends of the ball in this game. It's really hard to keep track of it all. The head coaching matchup between Mike Davis and Rob Keefe, 2 very, very strong indoor football minds who have succeeded at the highest level before. Man, both teams, incredibly high ceilings. The pick that I was gravitated to here, in such an evenly matched affair, give me the dart throw of Vegas at plus 120. They have, in the past couple years, only been a home underdog once. That was 2 weeks ago, where they completely outclassed the Arizona Rattlers in a 15-point win at home. And this was back a couple weeks ago. When the Nighthawks are playing at their finest, they're doing exactly what Jayden de Laura is doing offensively. Staging one touchdown drive after another and not letting the opposing defense get their hands on the ball. And we've seen Vegas sneakily improve on their impact defensive playmaking in the past few weeks as well. So could that come into play against a Bay Area offense that has been strong this year, but maybe there's some out there that still need a little bit of proof of how powerful they can be. But yeah, I like this play. Vegas as home dogs. Let's go outright here. Try for a rare underdog money line win. Last but not least, at 9:05, the third and final meeting between these two teams, the San Diego Strike Force and the Northern Arizona Wranglers, the only matchup of the season to take place at Findlay Toyota Center. Northern Arizona being given 8 in the hook, the over-under at 80.5. San Diego is minus 265 money line, and Northern Arizona plus 215 to try to stage the upset. I won't lie, watching the first 2 installments of this season series, especially the first quarters of those games, has been a challenge. Just very puzzlingly low-scoring first quarters. Kind of set the tone for both of those games to be like really close, stuck-in-the-mud type of games. San Diego won both prior meetings, 40-29 the first time, and 35-32 the last time out, one where Northern Arizona actually had the lead for the majority of the game. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this one pans out. This continues a stretch in San Diego's schedule where they're trying to bank as many wins as they can before a stretch of 4 games to close out the season. I believe 2 of those are against Arizona and 1 is against Bay Area. And Fishers is thrown in there as an opponent as well. The Wranglers, their playoff lives, whatever they have left, do hinge on this game. A loss by the Wranglers here plus a Vegas win eliminates the Northern Arizona Wranglers officially from playoff contention. So this is it for the Wranglers. Like, any sort of effort to stage some sort of surprising rally has to happen now. And I'll put it politely, the offense has kind of struggled in the meaningful parts of games. They did catch fire in the fourth quarter of last week's blowout, but I guess you could qualify that as garbage time when you're down by 35 at any point in the game. Almost high school rules of the running clock by that point. But in any event, my play for this game is a bold one. It is the under at 80.5. We had mentioned how when these two teams have matched up, it's for the most part been largely dominated by your choice of either defensive efficiency or offensive inefficiency, as neither of the two matchups even got to 70 points. Obviously, having Nate Davis back for San Diego does pose a little bit of a scare, because last week we were reminded of the exact ceiling that a Nate Davis offense possesses. But there's just something about this matchup here. Where Northern Arizona, even with Davis under center for San Diego, the Wranglers have been able to make plays defensively. Whether it's been takeaways, third down stops, whatever have you, to kind of keep the score below. Plus, anybody that knows me knows I love to complete these sets of three. I really do. So first game goes under, second game goes under. I assert that the third game follows suit, even though we're at a little bit less of a number here. For what it's worth, both of the prior matchups were set at 81.5 for the implied total there. Monica liking the money line at minus 265. Certainly a very solid play, especially at that 8.5 point spread. I know how scary those can be, especially scenes where in both prior meetings, Northern Arizona had a genuine shot to backdoor cover late. They came up a half point short in the first meeting in week 8, but they did manage to push through in week 11. So could it be 3 straight backdoor cover bids for Northern Arizona in this series? That we will have to see. Okie dokie. So now, to wrap up tonight, let's talk about the 3-leg parlay that I put together. We'll begin things off with the earliest of the 3 games. For Massachusetts, Iowa, this was a pick that Monica had pitched earlier. The under at 85.5. And this is a pick that I am going to tail right with you. Last week, when the Pirates played the Fishers Freight, Fishers was on a 7-game streak where the over had cashed in every single one. What we ended up getting last week was an incredible effort from the Pirates, both on defense forcing stops and on offense sustaining long drives to completely wear out the opposing team. That 40-23 win was a very typical win of what you would have seen from Massachusetts, for lack of a better term, in their heyday. And believe me, they are 8-1 to the under this season for a reason, which is the top mark in the IFL, by the way. Their core strategy: drag teams through the mud on offense and don't let anything by them defensively. You drag a game through like that, more often than not, you can pretty much neutralize any tempo that your opponent has. And that could extend to a team like the Iowa Barnstormers, who love to just sling the ball all around the field, which can lead and has led to an increased number of possessions on a per-game basis. If you're a believer in the Massachusetts 8-1 under record, objectively speaking, you're not going to get a better number than 85.5. Not unless some crazy roster moves are in store in the future. So let's hope that game stays below the number to set the tone for our parlay. Of which the second pick, and this is one I believe Monica threw in as well, Arizona minus 11.5. I have the other side to this, believe it or not. I have the other side. Is it a little bit of a hedge against the possibility of Arizona money line losing? Yes, a little bit. But I do believe that this spread can be covered by the Sugar Skulls. Aside from being the unofficial king of the backdoor cover, along with the Iowa Barnstormers the past few seasons, I think Tucson's got the offense to keep up with Arizona on a good day, particularly where the Rattler defense has not been good the past 6 games. They've given up over 48 points in their last 6-game stretch. And I feel like Tucson can exploit that. And all that we really need in a game script like this is for both teams to trade touchdown after touchdown. Maybe we get a stop or a takeaway from Tucson somewhere to kind of help with that game script. But we do get a really good number here. It is 11.5. Double-digit spreads in general seem to favor the underdog a lot of times. I just have a hard time backing Arizona at a double-digit spread, considering their relative defensive struggles that they've had. So it's an unusual pick to put in this parlay, but I think it's one that does have a solid shot. And in a weird inverted way, it kind of protects us against a possibility of losing Arizona money line. And also there's a path to both bets winning if Arizona wins by anywhere between 1 and 11 points. So that to consider too. The third leg of the lay goes right in line with Monica's minus 265 San Diego moneyline pick. And that is how I'm going to top this one off. We do have a moneyline odds that just barely gets us past the plus 400 odds requirement that I put as the minimum on any of my parlay attempts. And really, this one boils down to really making our best attempt at creating a free square. That's really all it is. San Diego, in most instances, is going to come up with a win to this game. On paper, they're just the more proven and capable team on offense, defense, and special teams. And we don't need an absolute masterclass either here. We just need a game where San Diego plays solid. They play to their identity, just as they've had the past few games. All wins, by the way. Where they just go in, work for 60 minutes, take care of the Wranglers, and move on to the next. That's really what we're looking for here from the Strike Force, and they are certainly capable of doing it. Again, a way that you can kind of spin the argument against is San Diego's 2-0 in this series so far. That third win usually is the toughest to get in these 3-game series. So to recap the parlay, we're going to start things off with the 8:05 game, Massachusetts at Iowa. We're looking for that game to go under at 85.5. The Sugar Skulls to cover as 11.5 point dogs at Arizona. And for the Strike Force to log an outright win against the 1-9 Northern Arizona Wranglers. Plus 401 is the odds, so right up against that minimum requirement, like we said. $10 bet would pay out 50 and a few coins in hand. So there's the parlay. If you like it, tail it. If you hate it, fade it. Maybe go the opposite on all 3. Who knows? But that is going to wrap it up for week 13 of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Again, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and kind of previewing the slate with me. So for those of you who are going to be testing your luck in the betting markets this week, I wish you the best of luck, and I will see you at the cashier.